Observe.
Everyone, and welcome to the Observe and Rapport Show, episode number 28. I'm Kyle Brennan, joined as ever by my beautiful co-host Keith Sullivan. Keith, how we doing today?
Couldn't be better, pal.
Wonderful.
Couldn't be better.
Wonderful. I just found out I had a labrum tear recently.
Really?
Yeah.
You wiped that smile right off my face.
I don't know why I felt like bringing it up.
What the hell is you hear about that all the time, labrum.
Yeah, I was
tear.
doing jiu-jitsu and
jiu-jitsu.
I was,
it's only a matter of time with jiu-jitsu,
I was
huh?
fighting against this guy who was like a former Harvard offensive lineman. He was just massive, and he like pulled me down, and I just felt like I was like, that's going to take a few weeks to heal, whatever it was. So I took a few weeks off of jiu-jitsu because like I couldn't even do a push-up.
No,
like
you really fucked it up.
Yeah, remember I was telling you I didn't do like any upper body stuff?
Yes, that's right. You did say that.
Yeah, so I was like, I think I need to get an MRI. After like 3 weeks, it still hadn't really healed. So I just got my results back today, which is why I bring it up.
Oh,
like the doctor was like, yeah, it looks like you tore your labrum, but it healed.
Yeah,
so
but you're
like,
healthy, you're young.
And he was like, and he's like, and I was like, so what do I got to do? He's like, you're good. Just do some rehab and don't go hard. And I'm like, okay.
That sounds like a torn labrum sounds pretty serious.
Yeah, and when you're in your 30s.
And what happened exactly? He was like pulling on it?
It was probably something I'd already tweaked a little bit, and he just yanked my arm a little further back, and it ripped.
Did you see that wrestler in the Olympics, dude? The American wrestler versus the Ukrainian wrestler, female. And dude, this bitch, she pulled this lady over her head and just neck first slammed her into the ground, bro. And this girl was just out. Out. She was a big lady too. So all that, like, she like scorpioned but on her neck. And it was just so bad. It was so bad. Like she's injured. She's out of the Olympics, whatever. Olympics are over now, but like, yeah, I mean, like, no, but my point is wrestling, grappling, jiu-jitsu, like that shit is so fucked up. You can really hurt somebody.
Yeah. It's just, it instantly, when you're in your 30s and you find out you have an injury like that, like luckily it's nothing serious, but if I'd actually torn something, I was like, there go the next, 5 months of my life. Like if I had to get surgery, like it's just such an inconvenience.
Surgery too. Like I remember I think I had a little mini bicep tear right here for the longest time. And every time I did a curl, it would hurt. You know what it is, man? I think 90% of things just leave it alone for a long time though, and then get back to it. Don't get surgery immediately, especially if you're not an athlete. Like just wait. Don't cut yourself open.
I definitely got a surgery on my knee that I did not need.
See?
Yeah.
But you were you were like a college athlete still, or no? Or was that after that?
Yeah, I was like 27 maybe.
Oh, then no. You weren't a college athlete. You were an adult.
Yeah.
But I meant like I thought you may have been in college and they were like, no, to play you have to fix that.
No.
So what do you do now? You just ice the shit out of it? Just take it easy?
Ice it. Yeah, I started lifting weights again just to like take it easy. But dude, you lose muscle so quickly.
Oh yeah.
3 weeks of doing nothing.
Your body doesn't hold on to it anymore.
So annoying.
But you know what's also on the contrary to that, what you're saying, I started lifting again probably like 2 months ago, and it was so pathetic, man. I couldn't bench 225 anymore, like for more than maybe like that just initial lift off the rack. And I was like, that is so sad for me because I used to bench 275, like no issues. And I'm already back up to 245, like 3 sets of 5 of 245. Like, nice. Hey, so like you can get it back. It's just if you don't maintain it, you're going to lose it in 2 weeks.
It's such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
How quickly.
Yeah. But let's get back to these books because the crypto thing I'm curious about. You read a book about cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of it right now, but it's called Crypto Confidential by this guy, Nate Eliason.
That's a really funny way to say Allison.
It's Nat Eliason.
Eliason.
Yeah. I've been following him on Instagram for a while because he's also a fellow book reviewer and blogger. I think he's around our age, but he's got a good blog. He's got a really good like Instagram reviews and stuff. And all of a sudden he came out with this book called Crypto Confidential. And I didn't know he was involved in crypto, this guy. but he was on a podcast. David Perel, who's like a internet writer, has a podcast called How I Write, which I've listened to a few episodes just because I'm a bit of a writing nerd. He had Nat Eliason on, and Nat Eliason talked about how he wrote this book and how he got into blogging and, you know, becoming like a book influencer and all that stuff. And then I forgot, I hadn't mentioned this to you. This guy, Alex and Books, who I follow on Instagram, book reviewer. He has like 500,000 followers, like probably the biggest book review account.
No shit.
On social media. He hosted a reading club in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I saw you went to a reading.
And he like
thing.
sent me a DM because I've interacted with him enough that he is aware of who I am. And he DM'd me. He was like, "Hey, I'm hosting this reading club in Brooklyn. Like, would love for you to come by. You know, just bring a book. We'll have a few beers, read some books." And I went to that in Brooklyn like 2-3 weeks ago. Met a few people. Passed out my bookmarks and stuff, and got to meet Alex, which was cool. But he gave out free books. And one of them was this Crypto Confidential book.
Cool.
And I was like, oh, wow, like serendipitous. So I picked it up and started reading it like 2 days ago. And dude, I forgot how much the crypto mania of like, I mean, obviously it started in like 2011 maybe, but like mainstream people, we didn't start hearing about it until like 2017.
Yep.
I think it spiked to like 16 grand. So like the people who were in it early, everyone knows like someone who just like made a killing and like retired or something.
Yeah.
But then in like during the pandemic, there was another huge boom where I think Bitcoin got up to like 120,000 or something crazy. I don't remember. Like my numbers are probably off. It's maybe like half that, but whatever. This guy, Nat, very smart guy, started to learn coding and stuff during the pandemic. His wife was pregnant. They needed to like find a house because they were having a baby and stuff. And he felt pressure to get money and stuff, right, to provide for his family. He was unemployed, and he was like, everyone seems to be making money off crypto. Like, why don't I get into it? And the story is basically, it's a nonfiction true story about his time getting into crypto as like a serious software developer. And like first as an investor, just like speculating like everyone was. And it's so like, it gives you anxiety. It's kind of like, what's the Adam Sandler movie where he was a gambler?
Uncut Gems.
Uncut Gems.
It's
like
fantastic.
It kind of reads like that because you feel him being like, you're like, don't invest in that stupid thing. That's a scam.
Yeah.
And like he lost like 35 grand.
Holy shit.
Like, cause he was all pumped up. He's like, I'm up. And like, he was going to bed at night. Like, oh, I'm going to make so much money. I'm going to double my money. And like, he wakes up the next morning, he doubled his money. He's like, oh my God, this is incredible. Like he's like, I'm going to reinvest and double it again. And then like the next night it just tanks. He's like, fuck. And he thought he was ruined. He just lost $35,000. He's like, holy shit. But then he starts getting involved in like a crypto community on like Discord and all these channels and stuff. And every single person he talks to who's now like a multimillionaire, they're like, oh yeah, I lost like 100K my first day. Or, oh yeah, I lost 50K. I lost
name of the game, man.
Like, everyone is doing it. And he was like, oh. He's like, so crypto is actually more like venture capital where you can make 10 bets and 9 of them will fail tremendously. But all you need is that one just like unbelievable whale that's going to make all your money back. And he explains crypto too. Like after every chapter, he has like a little explainer of like, here's what decentralized finance is. Here's what a smart contract is. So that's helpful. But it's just a wild story. It's halfway in, but he starts learning how to code. He starts getting into like, can I make my own token? He's like, part of me thinks this is a scam, but part of me is also like, there's never been an opportunity for people with little knowledge to just make hundreds of thousands of dollars with like the NFTs and stuff. And
what the fuck is that though? Like you said, he explains what cryptocurrency is, right? But what the hell is it? Because like, okay, it's money, but no one uses it. So where's it going? And what is it? Where is it? What's with the machines that have to build the Bitcoins? What is that all about?
We're actually about to embark on one of my favorite things, which is two
idiots,
guys
who don't know anything,
talking about crypto, but actually not knowing what crypto is.
Yeah, wait.
Which is my favorite thing.
You brought this up to me years ago. You were like, dude, I was listening to this podcast. These two guys were rambling about nothing. It's like trying to explain it. And one guy thinks he knows.
Yeah.
But he's not saying anything.
Is there anything else like that? Like where everyone's talking about it, but no one actually knows
it's
what it really is. Like I could probably explain to you for the next 10 minutes, like the terms that I've memorized.
Yeah, I know.
But I wouldn't be able to explain it to you in a way where I actually understand the foundation of it.
My point is,
and I've read like 5 books.
And
on
isn't
crypto.
the origin of it like it's this guy no one knows who he is,
Satoshi Yokomata or something,
right? And he mined coins.
So
come on,
the
what
premise,
are you talking about?
All right, here we go. Here's my
come on,
5 minute little
you got
spiel.
5 minutes.
Okay, so the premise of it makes sense, right? So, particularly think about countries where, like Venezuela or Argentina, where the value of their currency is extremely volatile, and if they want to invest and put their money in a bank, like they don't have any trust that money is either gonna, make interest, or it's gonna be safe, or that it's not gonna be taken out, whatever, right? So, everything in the banking system is centralized, right? It goes into a bank. It's backed by, insured by the FTC, and there's institutions that basically act as the middlemen, right? What crypto does, and also currency, so dollars or euros or whatever, there's no cap on it. So the U.S. can just continue to print dollars,
and
forever.
They do,
and so inflation goes up, right? Because there's no cap to the amount of dollars, so you can just add more dollars to the economy, and now the value of our dollars goes down. What crypto or Bitcoin does is it's actually capped. I forget the exact number that it's capped at, but let's say this guy Satoshi wrote a white paper explaining what Bitcoin and crypto is, where the amount of Bitcoin tokens, or the equivalent of dollars, will be capped at, let's say, I don't know the number, but like 100 million Bitcoin. And that's all that will ever exist, unless other people basically vote to make it more supplyable. So therefore it's decentralized. So there's no central governing body. It's
purely democratic.
It's peer to peer. So it's kind of like fax machines, right? Where the more people who have it, the more they're able to communicate with each other. That's what mining is. It's just like computers that are able to acknowledge transactions, which is what the blockchain is. So if I send you money right now over Bitcoin, I send you 1 Bitcoin and you accept it in your wallet. Everyone who has access to Coinbase and the blockchain is able to see the transaction. Kyle Brennan sent 1 Bitcoin to Keith Sullivan on this date at this time. It's stamped. And then whenever you send something to anyone else, or you buy or you sell, that transaction is logged in the blockchain by that peer-to-peer computer system of everyone mining. So the value of someone in a country like Venezuela is they can buy Bitcoin, and no government entity, no bank is controlling the value of it.
Is it at a point yet where you can buy coffee with it, and you can buy
I think it's getting there. I think it's possible,
because if it's decentralized, how are you buying?
Dude, I have no idea. So
like, how does Starbucks get your money?
I don't know.
Okay,
but
well,
I'm a skeptic believer in it.
Well, look, everyone's making money. So these people who have the money, they're rich. They've retired. They made $10 million with Bitcoin or whatever, or $50 million. Do they eventually so they sell that, right, at a certain point and cash it out like a gamble?
So this is what was happening in like 2020, 2021, where people were literally just making money by producing zero value. So the easy way, or the way you've probably heard of a lot of people who made money, were just people who got into Bitcoin early, right? They bought
30 of them.
They bought 30 Bitcoins for like $10 when it was nothing, and then the price shot up massively over the course of 10 years. All of a sudden, that $10 is now worth $200,000, and they pulled out. Right? That is normal, kind of like a stock just going up massively. But what happened during the pandemic was a few things. The first was that people were able to just create their own coins. So me and you could start Observe and Rapport coin because everything in the blockchain and everything is transparent. I could look at the code, like the back end code. So like imagine if for Facebook, right? I can copy the code to make a website look like Facebook.
Yeah.
But I can't copy like the algorithm underneath.
Yeah, this was the whole blockchain stability.
Yes, but so I'd be able to copy a Facebook website that looks like a copy of Facebook, but I couldn't copy the algorithm. With Bitcoin or crypto, I can look at like any like Bitcoin, Ethereum's code, like the underlying actual value of it, and copy it, like copy and paste and create my own coin today. At least this is what the author was explaining. So we could literally, out of thin air, copy and paste something, make an official looking website and create a coin. And as long as people believed
that it's worth something,
not even that it was worth something, as long as people believed that they could make money. So there was all these little scams where, and it's very hard to explain, but like me and you could just like give out coins for people who mined Observe and Rapport coins. And if other people thought it was valuable or they could flip it for a quick profit over a day, they would buy it and sell it and whatever. So people could make quick money like that by getting in on it early, even though me and you produced zero value. So there's nothing underlying it.
My other question is, how are these people who are retiring with these, transactions, how are they cashing out with actual cash, or are they?
So you would have to buy, this is also confusing. You'd upload your US dollars to Coinbase or some other exchange.
Because you're good for it.
Yeah, you'd get Ethereum for it. So like Ethereum and Bitcoin are like real currencies kind of in this world. Or let's pretend that they are, I guess. So you would buy Kyle coin with Ethereum. And then Kyle coin goes up. You cash out with Ethereum. You put that Ethereum back into Coinbase, and then you convert that into US dollars. A little confusing, but
it is, and it's only confusing because if there's no centralized place, what entity is giving you the cash? Like why? Like who? The Federal Reserve? It's just coming out of the...
I have the same questions for you.
Okay.
But so the other one, we can stop talking about this because neither of us... the other one was...
No one does.
The other one, which everyone knows about, but probably also can't explain, is NFTs.
Oh, that is almost... Because that has the art element to it where you can go, okay, why is a de Kooning worth anything? It's like, okay, because it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
like, that I understand.
So a lot of the undergirding like technology of crypto, like blockchains, smart contracts, NFTs, the technology make a lot of sense to me. I can't explain them to you right now, probably over words, but in my head, I sort of understand. Okay, these things are going to stand the test of time and probably will provide some lasting value. Maybe not this year, maybe not in 5 years, but at some point. NFTs to me are something that everyone associates them with Bored Ape Yacht Club and like these stupid pictures of like cartoon apes and stuff. And people were just flipping pictures of apes for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. So NFTs became a joke.
Yeah. Well, it's a mockery of capitalism.
Yeah.
It's what this is.
But this guy was kind of transparent about it. He's like, look, like there was an opportunity and I wanted to be in there first. And if I could make 30
Dude,
grand
I knew
in a
so
day.
many people, bro. I'm telling you, just get in now, get in. And those people, they don't have any money.
So NFTs to me, they're one of those things that like everyone rolls their eyes at because of what happened with the speculation.
So isn't the story about these people making all this money? It's all part of the whole thing. Like these people are probably in some way influencing these articles to go viral on social media about how much money they made. So that gives it more value.
Well, it's like what Jordan Belfort did in Wolf of Wall Street, right?
Yeah, it's all just fraud.
It was hype, like hype something up, like penny stocks.
Yeah,
flip them, and So there's definitely a lot of fraud in it.
There are people who think that Jordan Belfort didn't do anything wrong. Although he obviously did. It's just that at a certain point, like, what you're doing is you're calling out the system for its weak points and just capitalizing on the fact that you can manipulate people and lie, and like
there's where incentives are, people will exploit the incentives.
That's it. And it's not, and it's illegal because fraud's illegal, and like misleading the shareholders, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, isn't everyone doing that in some way? Starbucks selling me a cup of coffee for $3.89 is a ripoff. But they say it's worth that much.
Dude, my cold brew that I go to in Manhattan at Stumptown Coffee is $6.26.
That's absurd. Yeah. That's absurd.
I know. And then they have the gall. They ask me for a tip. I'm like,
that's a whole other story.
But
that's what my point is. It's not worth $3.89 a cup of hot bean water. It's not. But I give it to them because it is what it is.
Right.
You know.
There's actually a great documentary on Netflix that I watched called Bitconned. You should.
I've seen it. I never saw it, but I saw it out on the thing.
It's worth a watch. It's this it's this dumbass guy that we all knew.
Yeah,
right. It's this stereotypical like white homeboy.
Yes, sir.
With like shaved head,
lot of coke,
lot of coke, like on Adderall.
Sure.
Like, wears a wife beater.
Treats women terribly.
Thinks he's the shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Because he is.
Yeah. Got arrested a bunch of times. And this dude, it's a great documentary because,
I want to watch
because
it.
you like everyone knows a guy like this guy. He's just a scumbag.
Yeah.
And during this craze,
he's so funny.
he met he linked up with like the valedictorian of his high school, of course.
Yeah.
And they created a fake debit card to pretend that you could put your Bitcoin on a debit card. Like a Visa debit card. I forget what the name of the company was. And you could actually go to a store and like swipe your Bitcoin debit card. But
you couldn't, of course.
Obviously not.
Yeah.
But they faked at all these investors and they made hundreds of millions of dollars. They had people investing. They had a Chinese company invest like $300 million into them. And they did a fake video. The kid flew to China with this debit card. And as he was swiping it, was texting his buddy back in the US to be like, hey, like make this go through or something, or like pretend like this transaction went through, and like it worked. And yeah, this con was insane. And I won't ruin the ending, but it was just one of those where the kid, they knew it, they were ripping people off. And then they're getting interviewed and stuff, and they're just like, they're blatantly lying. They're like in suits, and just they have an office, and they make it look all official, and they're literally just copying the Visa logo onto like PowerPoint and
like on Vistaprint or something.
Yeah, putting it on a debit card. And like one reporter for the New York Times, he's just like, all I had to do was like 10 minutes of investigating.
That's what I'm saying.
He's like, I called Visa, and they're like, yeah, we've never heard of this company.
Right.
And then they got arrested, obviously, But yeah, it was just this kid. He saw an opportunity, and like kudos to him. He made a shit ton of money. He was just, investors were putting it in his bank account, and he was just doing whatever he wanted.
The original version of this mockery was the pet rock in the 70s. Like the guy literally sold people a rock in a box, and because he just created this bullshit idea that it's your pet rock. It's not just a rock. It's your pet rock.
Yeah, everything.
You can do anything you want. It's a free market.
Yeah, you're selling a story.
Market.
If you can sell a good story, you can sell
the
dumbest thing. Like how many times do you see people wearing like a stupid outfit or like shoes, and like
the shoes I see these days.
You're just you're like objectively those look awful.
Disgusting.
But because you saw Kendall Jenner wearing them, now you think they're the coolest thing ever.
Right.
And yeah, it's just like
it's a joke.
But
that's so funny, man. It's a fascinating conversation. It really is. Like I think it's so cool because it's funny. It's a comedy. It's like a joke. The whole thing's a joke, and that's what's funny about it.
I'm still interested in crypto. Like I'll never probably fully understand it. I have Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I don't even look at it. Hoping one day, it'll just go crazy.
Skyrocket.
Maybe but everyone else also is a little bit invested, so I think I'm never going to make like that massive.
I think that the people making that massive, amount of money, that's part of what it is. That's going to happen, and it's never going to happen to you. It's going to happen to somebody else.
So the story I forgot to tell, my personal story, in 2021, I was in between jobs. So I had like 3 weeks in between a job that I left and a job that I was starting. And me and Lauren were also looking at houses. So just like this author, I was like, I feel some pressure. I feel like I need to make money. Like crypto's going nuts right now. And I went deep on TikTok, on Discord, on YouTube and everything. And I was like, all right, I'm going to give myself 2 weeks to do research, like a ton of research where I feel like I know enough about where to invest, where I could possibly make a huge profit, right? It's going to be risky. So I think I was planning on risking $5,000. I was like, that's going to be my investment. If I lose it, like I'm comfortable with it, right? It's $5,000 is my stake. I'm not putting any more in that, but I'm going to do some tests. So I created a huge Excel sheet. I was tracking all of these like altcoins that like no one had ever heard of that were like 30 cents. And I was like, I set a date where I was like, I was going to invest. I was going to like make the move. And I was so confident, like on Twitter, everyone's like, this is the coin to buy. It's going to go crazy, like to the moon and everything like that. And one day, I forget what happened, but one day I was just like, you know what? Let me wait like another couple weeks. I don't know why I thought that, but there was like a gut feeling. And sure enough, like the next week, everything just tanked.
Yeah.
Everything. And
so you would have lost all your money.
And for sure. And before this conversation, I was like, you know what? Let me go look in my Coinbase account at those coins that I was looking at buying to see if anything's happened in the past 2 years. All of them are still like at zero. And I'm like,
holy shit, man. You see?
Thank God.
No, it's a joke. The whole thing's a joke. I mean, like, whatever, man. It's all made up.
Yeah.
Money's made up. It's not real. I mean, like it is, but it's not. You know what I'm saying?
It's a we choose to believe.
It's a monetary note.
Yeah, we choose to
believe. That's what it is.
It's worth something.
We just believe it. It's not true. We just have to believe it so that the world can run and all that. So I'm reading something that couldn't be more opposite than what we're talking about. It has nothing
Sure,
to
we
do.
could find something related.
Yeah, I guess I could somehow. Was the guy Japanese?
Satoshi Nakamoto was.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
So,
there's the transition.
Speaking of the Japanese, I'm reading a book about the Japanese. It's called the Japanese Gestapo, and it's about the Kemper tie. And look. I hate to change the tone of the episode.
It's going to change quick.
But, I'm usually pretty good at talking about like really fucked up, gruesome things. Cause like I look at stuff that's horrible online sometimes, like willingly, right? But the thing is, it's really hard to like truly explain how horrible the Japanese imperialism was during World War II. It's really hard to explain it because the only way to explain it would be to tell you what they did. And it's like,
you don't need to, because I think I know all of them.
Yeah. Well, like, here's the thing. It's like, I'll have, okay, for example, like, we all know the words that happened during war, executed, decapitated, or they were
R word.
The R word, which I literally don't even want to say because it's so horrible. Those things. And but what the Japanese did during World War II to people, to civilians, to soldiers, to POWs was not just those things. It was like very detailed, evil, sadistic, psychopathic behavior, like terrible, terrible things. And they killed so they killed 30. The Japanese military was responsible, estimated between 30 and 40 million people were killed.
Really?
Yeah, by them during World War II. And most of them were civilians. Most of them.
Japanese civilians?
No, other civilians in Asia mostly.
Like the Philippines.
So the Japanese imperialist reach was basically parts of China, Taiwan, Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Laos, those places in Asia. They spread that far, and they killed between 30 and 40 million people. Most of them were civilians. I'll just talk about a few brief things that I heard in the book. There were accounts of this girl who was in Vietnam, or her grandmother rather was in Vietnam at that time during the Japanese occupation of her country, and she lived in this village in the brush, like kind of, well, that's how Vietnam is geographically. It's just a lot of, jungle. And her village was way out past this plantation of thick, agriculture. So it was hard to get to. But every once in a while, the Japanese soldiers would get bored with their occupation, whatever they were doing. So they'd make the trip to this village for shooting practice on the people. And she said, like, it was just so sick to see them literally laughing at what they were doing. Like, oh, you missed. Oh, you got him. Like, the dehumanization process in their brains was so solidified and true. They referred to them as rats, for example. And they said, don't waste your ammo on the old rats. They're going to die soon anyway. Like the true dehumanization of people that they were able to accomplish. And like all things in history, it's interesting how this came to be. So
this was the what was it? Kemper tie?
Kemper tie. That's what.
So this was a unit within the military?
So they were a unit within the military. They were also in the Japanese Navy. They also existed well before the war. It was 1861 it was formed.
So were they like a spy?
They were originally supposed to be an outfit of people who were going to be responsible for forcing peasants and people who were farmer type people to modernize and let go of the old culture of Japanese culture and become modern. And like they were originally like kind of like the Gestapo, like in that way, like going and forcing people like in a fascist way through a fascist fashion to behave the way the emperor now wants you to behave. And then that kind of branched out to become a whole outfit in the military. And yeah, so they were very. It's. I need to explain why they were this way. So by the way, before I go into it fully, I just want to say it's never appropriate to judge people based on their ancestors' behavior. I'm not saying that Japanese people currently did anything wrong or are responsible for this or anything like that, obviously. But this did happen, and it's very undertaught in schools because Japan, to this day, is kind of, whether they're embarrassed or they're whatever. I think that what I'm about to explain may have something to do with why they won't just kind of like say sorry.
Yeah. Well, before you go into that, so did you read Ordinary Men?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems
the one about the Nazis, yes.
Yeah, the Nazis in Poland, like these Nazi officers in Poland. I don't know if we talked about it on this podcast.
We have. We've mentioned it in passing, like Man's Search for Meaning and stuff like that.
I read that book like a year ago, and yeah, you learn. I feel like in school you learn.
I read it like 4 years ago.
You learn all about Germany and the Nazis, right? Like
yes.
You know all the statistics, all the names, everything like that. I feel like you never hear about.
You never hear
Japan,
about this.
Really.
You never hear about the Kemper tie.
Pacific. I didn't like the fact that you just mentioned 30 to 40 million people. Like that's news to me.
Yes.
I had no idea.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't hear about it a lot in schools because apparently in Japan it's not really taught, even to their own students. They do talk a lot about though the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And they say how atrocious it was, and there's a saying in China that we didn't do enough to them when we did that, considering what they had done. So again, people think that what we were doing was unbelievably drastic, and how could we do that to a bunch of innocent people? It's like when you learn about what happened and what they were doing, their imperialist effort lasted about 10 years, from probably like 34 to 44 till the end of the war, and the things they were doing to people were so illegal in the world of like the Geneva Convention and all that, and all those guidelines for POWs and how to treat people in time of war and how to treat civilians, and just absolute disregard for humanity in every way. Like, and even the Germans said, the Nazis said, it's you will never find another military that just blanketed their treatment of all their enemies. Like there's always like favoritism still a little bit, like, hey, we're enemies, but we're neighbors or whatever. The Japanese military treated everyone with the exact same amount of evil, torturous, psychotic behavior.
Because when you said they're similar to the German Gestapo, I was like, oh, interesting, because I don't know what like ethnic group the Japanese targeted, right? Because the Germans obviously targeted the Jews, but they treated allied POWs maybe not as harshly.
No.
But like it sounds like the Japanese were doing it to
Well, they weren't hurting their own people, but they were in a way. Like, Mao Zedong, for example, he killed 50 million of his own people or 80 million of his own people in his efforts to modernize China. It's just a different kind of mentality in that part of the world. So let me get into a little bit why this may have happened, because from like 1600 to 1850, Japan was completely isolated from the world on purpose. They were putting effort into self-isolation as a culture.
Oh, yeah, right. That was like a policy.
Yes.
You learn about that in school.
Correct.
Yeah.
They didn't want anything to do with the rest of the world. For 250 years, it was like that. And this was during the time of samurai culture. So samurais were like the tippy top of the cultural hierarchy. They ran everything. They got all of the respect. They got whatever they wanted. They had utmost authority over everybody. If you, for example, were a person of the street and you weren't a samurai, and a samurai was walking down the street and you didn't show him respect by stopping, putting down what you were doing, turning and bowing, they would just cut your head off. Like, no question, just shing, just cut your head off.
I remember hearing about, I think it's Bushido.
Yeah, that's a term in the book I've heard.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's, and I might be mispronouncing it, but I think it's an honor code within the samurai culture, which is if you see someone else acting out, another samurai acting, unsamurai like, it is your duty to kill him.
Yep.
But also,
Dead serious.
But also, if you yourself feel like you're unsamurai like, you're to kill yourself.
Yeah,
well.
suicide was they would also tell other people to commit suicide, and they had to,
which explains further like a lot of the Pearl Harbor, like
kamikaze, kamikaze type mentality and all that. So imagine you're coming from this culture of the samurai culture, right, where this group of people at the top of this cultural hierarchy have utmost authority over you, your family, what you're allowed to do, what you're allowed, all that. So with the Western imperialist endeavors happening with, the British Empire at the time making its way through Asia, it made it through China, pretty
trade and stuff,
trade routes and stuff, and Hong Kong was entirely owned and ruled by the British Empire until 1997, I believe. And
1997?
Yeah, we didn't officially give it over back to China. They didn't really give it over officially till 1997 at midnight of June 1st, I believe, or July 1st. So the Japanese at the time and the Western influence was, hey, this is the way we do things. You have to act like us now. You have to trade with our commerce, with our crypto, with our Bitcoin, and with our money, and follow our rules and our laws and do things in our culture that are appropriate. This isn't appropriate. What you guys do here, you have to change that. So they were becoming westernized, China, right? And the Japan saw that happening in around 1850 or 60, right? And also a couple of other things happened, whatever, French influence and stuff like that. But like the main thing is that they were like, we aren't going to allow that to happen to us, because that's bullshit. We have our own culture. We have our own way of doing things, and we don't want it to happen to us. So we need to modernize, because they have guns and cannons and we're still chopping people's heads off with katanas. We need to get our shit together here. So the Kemper tie and all these things were created to like just really get people to get their head out of their ass. And there was a whole samurai civil war, by the way, between the IJM, the industrialized Japanese military, I believe, and the samurais. They killed like a bunch of samurais because it's like, it's enough. It's enough of this bullshit. We got to get with the times. And so they did. But that, you can imagine, for 250 years and even before that, that mentality was so baked into the culture of like authority at the top, and you do what I say, and you can't tell me no, and all of that, and kill at will if someone disobeys you, all of that. And there was also a lot of racial superiority involved with that too, like, being, if you're not, it's classism, right? It's like it's a class structured thing. So anybody who wasn't Japanese, who cares? Kill them. They're worthless. So you could say even that, like, even though Japan's part of Asia, they were carrying out, whether they consciously were or not, a genocide on the Asian continent. Like, they were invading, conquering, and killing everybody. Women, children, men.
Wow, I'd never heard any of this.
They were in all of these countries. And so, like, for example, there's the famous fall of Hong Kong. So Hong Kong was ruled by the British at the time, and Japan came in and invaded. That was like their big intro into the war. With like they declared war on Great Britain after that day, but that next day they tried to take Hong Kong, and they did. And there were a lot of hospitals there at the time. military people who were wounded and like recovering, nurses obviously, and they R-word all of them, all of the nurses, and they bayoneted all of the men in their beds, you know, hopeless, helpless people. And to even more disgust, like they then burnt all of the women alive. Like they doused them in gasoline and they lit them on fire. And like, yeah, like so yeah, like it's uncomfortable to talk about. Like and this happened everywhere they went. It wasn't just like a one time, hey, we hate the Chinese. Like this was their way of doing things, you see. So because it was such a brutal culture for so long, such a death was just like you could just die today because someone tells you to or something. So also another cruel thing that they would do, and there's no R word in this, thank God, but for POWs, by the way, like for example, the average percentage of a POW who dies while being contained is 4%. 4% during World War II, whether it was a German or
die.
Yeah, like 4% of the POWs would die in the German.
Wow, it's actually lower than I thought.
Right, because most people were following the rules in the Geneva Convention. They were like going by those guidelines of, you know, you have to feed them, you can't neglect them, they need water at least once a day, you can't torture them, you know, you can't leave them any injuries that will that will cause a lifelong disability, for example, like things like that. The Japanese had zero regard for that. So one thing they would do, and this speaks to their sadistic mentality, they would cut, like how the Joker, they would cut your cheek flesh, right? All here, all the way back to your jaw. And then they'd shove sand and dirt into the wound over and over again for days. So the nerves that control those muscles would be permanently damaged, so you could never smile again. So again, that sick, evil, sadistic intention behind it. You know, and
there's did you read the book Unbroken? It's by Lauren Hildebrand, but it's about I read it years ago, so I don't remember a lot of the details, but it was a former, I believe, Olympian runner in the U.S. who was sent to the Pacific during World War II and got captured as a POW, and they made a movie about it. Apparently the movie is awful.
Captured by who?
By the Japanese.
Oh, by the Japs. Oh my God.
Yeah, and he was in POW camps for, I think, years. I don't remember, again, the details, but yeah, that was one of the best books I had read at the time. I read this maybe...
I got to read it.
8-9 years ago, when I wasn't fully into reading at that point, but that book was... I mean, they talk about, you know, all the torture and stuff of those POW camps, and then, you know, some of the particular guys and like how sadistic they were. I've heard the movie's terrible. It was produced by Angelina Jolie, and it was like a massive flop, apparently.
Really?
I think it's on Netflix. I've yet to watch it.
Never even heard of it.
But I can't imagine how they capture any of that stuff, you know?
I mean, I don't even know how you could.
But yeah, the theme in a lot of these books, and yeah, as brutal as they are, like books that depict a lot of these things, I think it's, like you said, it's important. It's uncomfortable, but it's important to know and maybe not talk about all the time, but at least have a sense of what happened in history and what can happen, because
not even 100 years ago, you know?
Yeah. And it's also like, even though we don't know where it's happening today, you know, these sorts of things. And that's what was interesting about Ordinary Men, was what dehumanizing can do. Yeah. And how Ordinary Men, the basis of it, if we haven't talked about it, is, within Nazi Germany, you know, obviously there were full Nazis who supported the Hitler regime and the Third Reich and, you know, wanted to exterminate all of the Jewish people in Europe. But then they were also just ordinary people, right? Like shoe cobblers and like guys who worked at the post office who basically, if they didn't join the Nazi regime, they died. So they joined
the Kemper Tide would force people to join the military.
So they joined the Nazis and were given guns. And, you know, the book kind of transgresses from like the beginning of the war where, you know, these guys who were shoe cobblers or whatever would basically just kind of stand back and like, no, I'm not going to shoot people, or I'm not going to like herd like these starved Jewish people onto trains. Like, I'm just not going to take part of it. And the book progresses where over time, it's sort of that like herd mentality, which I think we talked about in the last episode, where it's like no one wants to speak up and say no. And so one guy says, yeah, I'll do it. And then everyone else follows along. And then
because
by the end of the book,
they don't want to leave all the work for this guy. I mean,
by the end of the book, they're executing lines of people in the woods. And it's just like, yeah, I know it's dark and this podcast got dark, but yeah, I mean,
this book was lended to me by a coworker, and he's like, look, I know you like history. I know you like, in particular, like wartime history sometimes, like you like to read books about that. And he's like, look, I'm just telling you, it's tough. Like it's really sick. It's sick with what happens in war sometimes. And by the way, I mentioned that statistic about 4% of POWs die. In Japanese POW camps, 27% of them died. So It's like way more than triple even.
What was the movie with Christian Bale where he's like a POW? And I never saw it. I think it's in Japan. Oh, it's a great movie. I can't remember the name of it. But I think his like plane like gets shot down or something, and he's a POW.
Wow.
And he escapes. I feel like it's something Dawn, but yeah.
Yeah. So and another thing is like I heard a story about a Japanese student watching a documentary on this. And by the way, this is all proven. This isn't like there's accounts of this. There's photographs. There's the R Word of Nanking. That's a very popular book and like also true story. 300,000 people, mostly civilians, killed in one day or over the course of a week or two. Mostly women and children, R-worded, decapitated. They had decapitation competitions, actually, who could cut off the most heads in the shortest amount of time. Anyway, but this guy who was this Japanese college student who was watching this documentary was left in tears and his jaw dropped because he had no clue that this happened. No clue. And he was from Japan, like never learned a thing about this. Said that the extent of their knowledge about it was that we got nuked and it was unfair and it was, completely unjustified and all that. And it's never justifiable, right? Nuclear war or any of these things. But, it's sick. And one last thing I'll say, there was an interview I was watching. This was a separate thing. I was looking up like interviews of like wartime veterans, World War II vets. And I wanted to find one of a Japanese guy because it's like, what do they have to say about, and it was an older interview, like from the 80s or something. And they said, do you have any regrets? Do you have any regrets about what happened during the war? And he said, my only regret is that we lost. Wow. So like my point is, he's still so in that mind because they beat it out of you. The idea that you don't deserve this war.
I think, if memory serves me correctly, I think maybe my brother was just recently watching The Pacific, the HBO series. And I think he was telling me, or someone else was telling me that, or maybe it was when I was watching like World War II in color, that if the U.S. didn't accomplish basically what they did in the Battle of Midway and like taking over Iwo Jima and stuff, that the Japanese, I mean, after 2 nuclear bombs, would not surrender. No. Like they basically said, like you can do whatever you want to us. We're not going to surrender. So like a lot of the what the Pacific talks about is like I forget there was one I think key island that the U.S. kind of won over that like they were like thank God we did this because eventually Japan surrendered. But like the U.S. was pretty concerned that Japan would just never surrender. We would be in this kind of never-ending war. Yeah, kind of like a Vietnam situation where we'd just be like,
Yeah. So to this day, there's still all this like Asian racism, and I say Asian meaning like in Asia, there's so much racism towards Japanese people because these people, I mean, like a lot of their grandparents and like their.
That's wild. I didn't know anything about this.
No, it's really, really eye-opening to, and again, you wonder why. It's hard to say. At least the Nazis did what, but like it's hard to say that because they were so horrible as well.
I feel like the only ones you really learn about, definitely learn I'd say in terms of like school knowledge, probably 80% of it is Nazi Germany,
and the other 20 is like maybe Russia.
Yeah,
maybe.
That's it. You never really hear about. You never hear about Mao Zedong much at all. You never hear about Japan.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, it's the suppression of information, and it's because
also China and Japan suppress a lot.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's all part of it. Like they still to this day, you know, and look, my dream is to go to Tokyo. My dream is to go to Japan. Like I it's a beautiful, beautiful place, culture, all of that. But they still won't admit to what they did.
My jiu-jitsu instructor, Dan, he's a big reader. He was telling me today, I don't know if this is true, but I assume because he reads a lot, he probably knows this. He said their book banning and censorship was heavier post-Nazi Germany than pre or during Nazi Germany.
Well, of course.
Meaning everyone wanted to eradicate basically the existence of
what happened,
all those books and everything like that. Because
I mean, they were so sure that they were going to win, dude, because they really believed that that this was their destiny for Japan to. You hear about like Hitler wanted to take over the world, the emperor, the Japanese emperor. I can't pronounce his name, but he. The goal, outspokenly, the goal was for Japan to run the world. That's what they wanted. They wanted complete global domination, and they were dead set on it.
There's a Amazon show, I've never watched it, but it's like Man in the High Castle or something like that?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
It's about like what if Germany and Japan had won World War II.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's an interesting premise. I've never watched it.
I can't wait to get to the part where this all falls apart for them, because it's right now at the height.
Oh, you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's at the height of it all, and it's like really brutal. And it's like I as much as I know about World War II, I don't really know exactly, again, because of the suppression probably, what really caused the Japanese to fall, the Japanese military. I mean, I know the bombing, but it's not like they surrendered that day, you know.
If anyone's listening, I imagine my Uncle Dick would probably have one. Maybe I'll text him after. But I've been asking people.
For World War I,
for like what is the best or multiple books on World War I, and I haven't gotten a good answer from anyone yet.
Yeah, I can't even think of one.
No,
you know,
I don't really know like what's the preeminent like book to read.
Yeah,
because you can't really answer that for the Civil War or World War II, but you could say here's 5 books that like are amazing.
Might explain it all. Yeah, I mean, and also just if anyone's interested, because I do know the main reason that they got involved in the war at all, because you might be wondering like, why would they want to do this to like people? Like,
yeah, I feel like they, you know, I feel like the World War II was going on, and like Japan kind of came in and was
like us too, fuck everybody, you know. But they were really low on natural resources, extremely low, like everyone's gonna starve to death low, and they saw that China being as gigantic as it is. They were like, we could easily take some of that, easily, and we will, and we should. And also, I mentioned a little bit about this beforehand. The Western imperialist influence was getting too close to them, you know, and they were like, we're not having that. Like, I'm not doing the whole, you know, good morning. Like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not doing it, you know, whatever. So like they wanted to preserve their culture. They saw the West coming, and they were like, fuck that. So natural resources and preservation of culture, they fought for what they thought was right.
That's the other fascinating part of history, is just how much British
forget
influence.
it. Did you know that they had so much global domination at one point that they strategically set up their empire so that the sun would never set on it. Did I mention? Did I ever bring that up to you?
I've seen that.
No matter what time it was, they were making money.
Yeah.
No matter what time.
So another book I read, I won't talk about it much, but it's called The River of the Gods.
Yeah, I saw you reading that.
So it's the same author as River of Doubt, Candice Millard. River of Doubt, the Teddy Roosevelt book, was like phenomenal. Such a good book.
Episode 3, I think, we talked about.
I figured this book would be just as good or similar. But it's a story of 2 British explorers in like the 1850s on the search to discover the source of the Nile River, or like so apparently the Nile River is broken up into 2 sections. There's like the Blue Nile, which obviously is blue, and then the White Nile, which is like more murky water. And apparently no one had ever discovered like where the originating source of the White Nile was, because it was so hard to like navigate the grasslands to get there. And these 2 British explorers came down And, you know, they made all these discoveries and they were making maps and stuff. And just like the lake that they found that eventually they discovered to be the source of the Nile River, it already had a name. It was called the Nyanza. And this guy is just like, well, our queen is Victoria.
Yeah.
So now this is Lake Victoria.
That's it.
And now everyone knows it's Lake Victoria. And
so
like,
it is. You ever see that Chris Rock bit where he's like, Christopher Columbus Day is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. He goes, he discovered land that already had people on it. It's like he discovered somebody's backyard.
Yeah.
Like he's like, oh, I claim this for Spain, and then some guy was like, get your fucking flag off my yard, man. What are you doing here? Like,
Yeah, literally.
You know, it's so ridiculous. But it's the same.
But that's also just what history is.
Yeah.
Like it's just people going to other land and being like,
rewriting everything.
No, we want this.
Yeah, this is let's close on this. This is whatever. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You ever wake up and you are thinking about something immediately? Okay, this happened to me the other day, and because usually I wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm awake. Oh, I got to get ready for work. Shit. Okay. But the other day I woke up and I was immediately like, that scene in The Matrix when the Oracle's talking to Neo. What the fuck was that all about? So I don't know. I think I was having a dream about it, and my awakening didn't disrupt my train of thought. And I kept going with it. And I was thinking about this scene in The Matrix. And I'm not just doing this so I can make a reel. I probably will, but still. I'm not, though. It's really important. There's a scene in The Matrix and The Matrix is the greatest movie of all time. I don't care what anybody says. And there's a scene in The Matrix where Neo, Keanu Reeves' character, goes to see the Oracle. And he's trying to figure out if he's the one or not. The Oracle is this woman who, she sees the world through a different like plane of interpretation. And so therefore she can kind of predict the future, and she knows what happened in the past, whenever. And she tells him that he's not the one. And I always wondered, why did she tell him that? Because you find out watching the movie that he, of course, is the one. So why would she tell him that he isn't? Like, why would she lie to him? And I just was like walking to work, and like, you know, when you're walking, the brain's moving, you just got up. Like I just had a good night's sleep, and I was really getting into it. And I realized there's a point where she realizes that he wants to know that. So she goes, okay, let me stand up. And she starts making a mockery of this whole thing. She goes, open your mouth, say ah. And, you know, she's like checking his face. She's looking at his tonsils. She's like checking his eyes.
She's like baking a cake or something.
She's like making cookies, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, look, she looks at his hand. She's like, oh, I'm supposed to say that that's interesting, right? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then she tells him that he's not the one. And he's like, what? I really thought that I was. And you know, she tells him, you know, Neo, Morpheus believes in you, right? And he believes in you so blindly that not you, not even me, could convince him otherwise that you're not the one. He believes it so much, in fact, that he is going to risk his life to save yours. So in one hand, you'll have Morpheus's life, and in the other hand, you'll have your own. And one of you is going to die. Which one is entirely up to you. So she gives him this like choice, right? And I had this like epiphany, I guess, which is like a weird thing to call because it's a movie, but like I went, oh my God, it's a choice. You are the one, and you're also not. It's up to you. So like, because that situation that he's in later in the movie, that's when he becomes the one. Because he risked his life to save Morpheus, and he realizes all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. But the point of what she was trying to say to him, I think, and she says this to him, and it kind of wraps up this scene brilliantly in like a very deep philosophical sense. She says to him, because he's like upset about that news, and she goes, listen, don't worry about it. As soon as you walk out that door, you're going to start to feel better. I promise. You're going to remember you don't believe in any of this fate crap. You're in control of your own life. Remember? And it's like, oh, it's up to me. Like, I am the one, but I'm also not. Like, you do have, fate is real. You do have a destiny. But that doesn't mean that you can just wait around for it to happen. You have to choose to do it, to do the thing. And I was like, I don't know. I just thought that I was like just half asleep, and I was like really thinking about that. And I was like, that is really fucking awesome. Because like, that's so true. Like, everyone's that whole story, the archetypal story, the warrior, you know, the hero, the one, they all make this decision to do this insanely sacrificial, awesome thing at the end of the day. They weren't born the one, but it's only because
the hero's journey.
Yeah, and it's like it's only because Morpheus believed in him at all that he became it. So like believing in somebody, encouraging them, and all of that all adds up to it. And I just thought that was so brilliant.
You know, it's funny.
You know, what a great movie.
The Matrix came out in like 1999.
Yeah,
right. And I remember seeing it in theaters, and I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I was like, that was a fucking awesome action movie. And I think like X-Men came out like the same year.
Sick, yeah.
And at the time, because I was 7 or 8 years old, I looked at those two movies like the same. They're like, oh, just a cool action movie, right? Like he dodges bullets. And then it wasn't until like maybe a few years ago where I actually
realized the profundity
I rewatched The Matrix, like took an edible, and I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah,
like,
wait a minute. One
fantastic.
last thing I want to say about it, because in the second one, you know Agent Smith? Because this brought me back to the world of The Matrix. And I was like, there's that scene where in the first one he obviously kills Agent Smith, and then the second one he comes back out of nowhere right after he talks to the Oracle again. That has nothing to do with this. But Agent Smith comes back, says to him, when you killed me, a part of you got like imprinted onto me or something, and I was destroyed and then re-uploaded into the Matrix. But this time, a part of you was copied onto me. And I know what my role is. I know what I'm supposed to do in the Matrix, but I couldn't do it anymore because I was compelled to not do it. I was compelled to stay, compelled to disobey. I was supposed to go into like the deleted file or something, but I didn't want to. And he goes on about this thing about purpose. And he's like, we all have purpose, and you took mine away from me. And now and that's why he tries to kill him, because like, it's this idea of like, you know, in this weird way, like freedom is almost like a slave. It's almost like slavery in a way. Like if you're too free and you have no responsibilities, then what the hell am I alive for?
Yeah.
So Agent Smith lost his purpose because he gave him like free will. He gave him decision. He gave him like the ability to choose and be outside of the Matrix. And I was like,
yeah.
Bro,
dude, I just wrote something about this.
About purpose.
I wrote about like owning, like the value of taking responsibility and having like a purpose, because Jordan Peterson has a great quote. He talks about, he's like, you know, life can be very miserable or uncertain at times. He goes, and we need some ethos or some undergirding narrative that drives us forward in our life towards something. You need something to propel you and to challenge you, and to give life some sense of meaning, whatever it is. But it's interesting. So that I love, and I've written about it. But the choice thing, to me, is one of the most important, like, philosophical things that I've ever sort of like grasped. Was early on in my reading adventure or journey, was understanding that everything is a choice. Like how you choose to feel in any given moment is a choice. How you choose to let something affect you is a choice. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you can choose how to respond to that. If you wake up, feeling like crap, you can choose to feel like crap and treat yourself like crap, or you can choose to change the story in your head. You can choose to take action to turn that around. Yeah. And you always have a choice. Always. And when I got my first tattoos, the first one I ever wanted to get was something that I didn't want to get the word choice or choose, but I wanted to get some sort of symbol that to me represented like a reminder that you always have a choice in any given situation.
Get a red pill and a blue pill.
And I still, no, I don't even like that. I still haven't, that might actually be good, but I still haven't come up with a good, like, an image that I would want to put on my body that would represent that.
Ask ChatGPT.
I tried to get AI to come up with one, but I haven't seen a good one.
Yeah. I'm going to plug my other podcast before we leave. Listen, I started another podcast. It's Headlines and Humor. I did an interview with ChatGPT on the channel. I'm also doing like this thing where I just read the headlines and rant, because I do it at work anyway. So I may as well just do it on camera and document this stuff. So Headlines and Humor podcasts on Spotify, just like this one. It's on, the other one, YouTube or whatever.
On Instagram, follow him on Instagram.
Headlines and Humor Pod.
Very funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. So, anyway, you always have a choice.
Take the red pill.
Take the red pill every time. Yeah. All right, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.